Welcome to She Chose Joy with Melanie, where we discuss all things love, freedom, wellness, and joy. I'm your host, Melanie Foote-Davis, also known as the Soul Whisperer. I'm excited about our topic and our guest today. She's a woman with a servant's heart, a strong believer in lifting while you climb. So she mentors industry professionals, hosts empowerment gatherings, and supports independent filmmakers. She's a Chicago native who knows a thing or two about reinventing yourself and rebranding as she transitioned from business and technology into a Hollywood executive. Who am I talking about? I'm speaking about my sister, Toy Monique Hawkins, a television executive and producer who currently develops scripted content for BET Network and the newly derived BET Studios as vice president. While both brands are where Black culture lives, they differ in that BET Network promotes Black culture content, while BET Studios promotes Black content creators. Prior to BET Networks, Toy Monique developed, sold, and produced projects at Will Packer Productions, a television and feature film production company known for its box office successes like Girls Trip, Night School, and Think Like a Man. Some of the other projects under Toy Monique's purview include That Girl Lele, Bigger, Kingdom Business, and The Ms. Pat Show. So let's get into the show. Here's Toy Monique. Hello, Toy. Welcome to Show's Joy with Melanie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I am so excited that you said yes to join the conversation here on this platform. I always one of the things that I feel especially grateful for is I constantly say I am surrounded by power and brilliance, right? And
Yeah.
and I am one that doesn't believe in accidents. And so I feel like everything has, if we cross paths, that there was a purpose there. Now, whether we leaned into it or not, that's on us. But I do feel like that connection, no matter how long the person stays, is meaningful. And so for that, even my connection to you is purposeful. And so I'm super excited to have you here.
Thank you. I love that. No, I agree. It all makes sense to me. And, my hope is that technology will not get in our way. So that's my prayer. But I'm going to ask for grace in advance because sometimes my Wi-Fi can get a little choppy.
Yeah, well, anybody who's heard I won't get into that today, but technology is one of the things that I can be easily triggered by. It's something that I don't feel like I have a sense of control of. And so when my technology is not working, I get really edgy. So that's an area of opportunity for me to grow, right?
Love it. We're already into it.
Right. But here's the thing, it's going to work for us. It is going to work
That's
for
right.
us. We are
That's
going
right.
to just make this magic happen. So when we were talking the other day and the conversation about branding came up.
Yes.
And I find that a really juicy topic, if you will, because sometimes people think that brand is only for people who are in business for themselves, and not realizing the power of your personal brand and what people really know or think of you when you're not in the room.
Yes. Personal brands, right?
So tell us a little bit about you and how you learn what the power of a brand is and what makes it so important?
Well, I would say I stumbled into this notion of branding yourself, but truth is that I spent a lot of time taking personality tests and assessments, mostly for work, because a lot of corporate environments try to issue them out as team building exercises to help strengthen team collaboration and whatnot. And I started to notice that, each of these personality tests said something about me that was pretty on the nose. But more importantly, it was something about me that I kept getting feedback to change. And so I started to think, well, how do I change this thing? And how, first of all, how am I conveying this thing, which I'll get to in a second? How am I conveying it to people? And I realized that it comes off of me when I first walk into a room. And so that's what got me to thinking about, your personal brand and branding yourself, which really starts when you first walk into the room. And you have to be aware of it. So when you walk into the room, what is your entrance saying to the audience, to the people that are already in the room, to the people that come into the room after you? And that's not to say that you need to be the first one into a room and be the first one to arrive and the room should be empty. But if that's your personality, which you probably already know whether or not that's your personality, then that's fine. That's a part of your brand, that you show up early and that you care about being the first one there, whether it's to set up the room or to greet people that come after you, or to just, I don't know, show up as the person who's the early bird that gets the worm, or whatever it may be. But that's a part of learning your brand and learning who you are. And so for me, I noticed for a long time that I would get really, speaking of technology, affecting you, I would get really agitated if I was late or running late to something. And it was mostly because I learned that in a weird way, I'm a people pleaser. And so I wanted for people to be happy or content with trusting that I would show up on time, ready to go, ready to lead, ready to deliver. And it was associated with my personality trait of being a dominant leadership type. And so I was thinking about how showing up late to things affected me and affected my brand, how people perceived me, because I didn't want them to perceive me as late, because that's not a leadership quality that I wanted. It didn't go hand in hand as a leadership quality I wanted to portray. So I would make sure that I planned enough time to show up early. And we have this rule in my industry now that if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. If you're late, don't come. And so I just really felt an impact, right? I really felt an impact when it came to just my arrival. Now I'm super granular about this, but it's just one example of your personal brand that you don't think about. When you show up and what time you show up gives people a certain perspective about who you are. And if you're a person like me who cares about that aspect of their perspective, or whose career depends on their perception of it, or whose family needs you for whatever reason, then you should care about that level of detail, showing up on time. For some people, it could be showing up with their face beat. That's not really my struggle. Like, pop a lip, my glasses. I don't even need my mascara or my lashes if I got my glasses, hair in a top knot, I got my headband, like I'm okay with that. Right. But I know some friends who, if they don't have a full beat, they won't go, because their brand is reflective of a full beat everywhere they go. Some people can't go without their waist trainer. If their waist isn't snatched, they cannot be seen in public, or they can't go about their day. Even your phone. If you are the kind of person that's always on your phone and never looks up from your phone to engage with other people, know that that is speaking louder about your brand than your words when you do finally look up. So I know I kind of hit on a few things at the surface level. So I'm just going to pause because I can just go about this, and just make sure that I am hitting on what you're asking, or if
Yeah,
I've already railed.
it's funny that you mentioned all those because as it relates to, I'll start with your entering the room. Like there's this thing that I often talk about with my clients about is checking in with what's your energetic signature, because that is also like that, the way you enter a room or the vibration that you carry is very much connected to how people experience you. And so that's what I thought about when you mentioned the way you enter a room, whether it's late, early, or even if you walk in with your head high and all of that, walk in feeling like fully in your power can make a difference too. And then I am raising my hand because on assessment tests, I am also a pleaser. I am also a people pleaser, and so I am constantly working at when my pleaser is showing up, that is working on behalf of all that's working for the good, or if it's actually a barrier. That's a different conversation.
Well, I mean, it's connected. It's connected, you know, because you're well, let me slow down. I'm ready to just go right into the deep end. But you're right. When you walk into the room, it's not just physical. It's very much about your energy and your aura and your presentation. You know, if you can tell so much about body language. If I walked in limping, it would be obvious that I'm in pain. But even if I walked in with my head down and my posture sunken, that's communicating maybe there's an internal pain or depression or just carrying a heavy burden. I saw the phenomenal, legendary casting director, Robbie Reed, who I get to work with. She walked by me one day and she just gasped when she walked by. And I thought about her for maybe an hour or two that day because she just gasped when she walked by. And so when I saw her again, I'm like, I just wanted to check on you. Are you okay? Or, you know, just how are you doing? She's like, oh yeah, I'm fine. I'm great. I was like, okay, because you gasped when you walked by me earlier. She's like, oh, I probably was in the hurry to something or whatever. I said, okay. She's like, but that's the mommy in you that's, you know, like checking on me or whatever. And so she was very receptive and encouraging, but that's an example of her unintentionally conveying something that caused someone else to notice and perceive something that it wasn't. So I'm thinking she's stressed about something, or there was, you know, she's hurting, or maybe I was in her way, or all of these different thoughts. And she is none the wiser because she's got a one-track mind to quickly get to where she's going. But she communicated something to me in passing that I couldn't let go of. So that's something that you're doing, whether you know it or not. When you're entering a room, you're communicating even without words. The time you enter, your posture, your body language, your breath, your words, your eye line, all of these things are communicating who you are, your state of being, and whether or not you're approachable in that moment. And you should really be aware of it because that all connects to your brand.
So true. So true. I want to also go back for a moment when you said it was something about people wanting you to change, like the quality that was showing up and others wanting you to change. And that I don't believe is unique to you. I believe many of us have experienced things where something that is your strength, other people are not willing to accept or embrace. And so for example, with me, the Strength Finders assessment is the first one that ever acknowledged empathy as a strength. And I was like, oh, right, they know me, they get me, right? Whereas the rest of the world considered that a soft skill and felt like I cared too much. And saw it as something that stood in my way until they actually needed that quality in the space
Yes.
to calm, to diffuse a situation, calm a client down. Then it's like, Melanie, can you come in? Go get Melanie. It's like, oh, wow, now that's a strength. It's conveniently a strength now when it's working for you. So I just thought that was interesting.
It is very interesting. And so for me, going back to those assessments, which again, it revealed so much about me and continues to. I took them with a grain of salt in the beginning because I'm like, what kind of test can tell me who I am? Especially because it's taken given my current state of mind. But as I continued to take them over the years, I noticed that there were similarities across them all: the Myers-Briggs, the personality assessment, I can't even name them all, but I knew that I was labeled a DI on the DISC assessment. I was an ENTJ, a choleric temperament, a commander. So all of these things showed me as a leader, as a very strong leader, as a leader, even without preparedness, like I can jump in immediately and make things happen. And I remembered in my corporate work, back when I used to work at Willis Towers Watson in technology, I remembered being told oftentimes that I was very passionate and that I should consider my audience when communicating. And that was one of the things that I felt I needed to change. How do I enter a room softer? How do I enter a room more approachable? And it wasn't until one time I was in LA and I was in grad school and I showed up late because I was rushing and I was showing up late to my class. And I remember the instructor who he'd done business affairs for CBS at the time, and he was teaching. So I came in not through the front door, but through the back door, and I tiptoed to my seat and I was quiet, and he was still teaching or whatever. And he just blurted out, "Oh, hi, Toy Monique, nice for you to join us." And I was just like, "Oh, sorry, I'm so late. I just thought I'd just tiptoe in quietly and have a seat. I didn't mean to disrupt. I'm so sorry. I'll catch up." And he goes, "You can never tiptoe into a room. Your presence is too big." And I was just like, wow. So no matter how quiet, it spoke to me. Yes, I was late and I should have been on time. And guys, I've worked on that. It's better. But that moment showed me that I may as well sit and settle into who I am. Because if I try to reduce myself to accommodate others or try to be quiet when I'm a loud, boisterous personality, I'm not being my true self. And even without trying, my brand had already communicated, my personal brand had already communicated before me that I am a big, bold personality. And that's okay with me. So yes, I'm passionate. And yes, I can communicate loudly. And yes, I can, be assertive about my opinion or my position on things. But that doesn't mean I need to change to accommodate others. Yes, there is a level of adjustment that might be needed so that I'm heard, or that I'm working in a collaborative environment, that I'm a team member. So that's not to say just take me as I am or leave me, but it is to say I don't need to change who I am, because I'm fine with my brand and I love my brand and I'm consistent in my brand and who I am. But it is to say that if your brand is different, if you're more empathetic and I'm more focused on logistics or the goal or whatever it may be, that together for us to reach our common goal, that you might have to come a little bit closer to me and I might have to come a little bit closer to you. But it's not my responsibility to change to accommodate everyone else. And that was something I learned on this journey about me, my brand, who I am, and that it's okay to be that way.
Yeah, that I love that story. And it reminds me also of one of mine where it can be either way for me. It depends on the setting, right? So there are times when my presence is really strong. And even though I'm not speaking, you know I'm in the room, right? Yes. And then there are times when I am intentionally reserved because I'm just feeling out the atmosphere and reading the space and seeing when it's important to speak up and when it's not. But I was told once that sometimes by a coach actually, that my presence can sometimes be too oceanic.
Oh.
And that could feel intimidating to people who feel like a pond.
Oh.
And I was initially taken aback by it. And again, feeling like, well, wow, what did I do that was so strong that felt that people couldn't connect? But then I shifted and it's like, no, I know who I am. And there are times when it may come off as big in that space, but it's also purposeful. And I'm inviting you to swim with me, right? Yes. And my new mantra became, I embrace my bigness and all of it, and however that shows up, right? But it's those moments that can cause us to rebrand based on what other people want us to be.
Yeah. You know, you said a word that I like, rebrand. Listen, there is so much power in that. You know, sometimes we show up with this amalgamation of all the things that we've learned and been taught and experienced in life, and we just accept it and we wear it like a coat. But we should all feel empowered to be our best selves and be the version of ourselves we are most happy with. I'm not even going to say content with, happy with. That's, you know, this whole idea of branding yourself, it goes right along with loving yourself. Because if you just think about brands for business for a second, Nike probably went through a gazillion prototypes for a brand before they settled on just do it, because they were happy with it. You know, Apple went through a billion different types of logos before they were happy with the one that they were going to spend a gazillion years, you know, with, because they're happy with it. So I feel like we have to do the same thing. We have to look at all of the different qualities that make up our personal brand, who we are both, and hopefully we're the same person in every environment. If you've got to change in a bunch of different environments, you don't know your brand. And you need to figure out what things you want to you know, shake off, undo, unlearn, get rid of, learn, add, grow, all those ingredients, and develop a brand that you are happy with. And guess what? If you try that on and you're like, you know what, this still doesn't feel like me, or I don't like how I'm showing up in the world, then you can rebrand. I was showing up late. That was an element of my brand I did not like. It did not match the leadership qualities that I possess. So now I make a conscious effort to add more time to whatever it is I'm doing so that I show up on time. In fact, I like to show up early. What did I have to do to accomplish that? I definitely had to stop spending so much time putting on a full face, because that was the thing I could sacrifice. You know, I had to make sure my curls were popping. I had to make sure I was dressed appropriately, but I felt like God blessed me enough with a cute enough face that I could go out into the world almost bare. So cutting that out allowed me to rebrand myself to be the person that shows up on time, to be the person that you can depend on to be there, to be the person that'll be ready for whatever actions we have to take as a team, or for whatever preparations weren't done in advance of the event or the whatever it is that we're doing. I'm going to be there as a leader, a servant leader, to make sure that it gets done. That was more important to me. And so I rebranded myself. So anyone who may have encountered me in the past before I rebranded myself to be a more punctual individual, they might have associated my brand with tardiness. Oh, Toy, she not gonna get there on time. She always gonna be 15, 20 minutes late. If you have a dinner with the girlfriends, oh, okay, make sure you call Toy and find it, show her the menu or tell it to her on the phone so that you get her order in. Otherwise, we'll be waiting for her. So that was associated with my brand because, and I knew it because of the conversations that were happening. But once I rebranded myself, which takes time and persistence, I was able to become more reliable. I was the one that's like, hey, I grabbed the table. Hey, when you get here, there's still parking on Monroe, or whatever it may be. Or hey, I'm here, I grabbed coffee and donuts, so don't stop for breakfast. And it felt so much better because that to me reflected a leadership quality that I valued. Some people may not care. They may feel like, okay, when I get there to the event, I want to get there while it's in full swing, and I want to just enjoy the people for an hour or two and then go home. But for me, I wanted to be a part of the experience, the setup, the administration, the leadership of it all. And so I was able to reshape how I was perceived in that small area that I'm using as an example. And it made a huge difference.
Yeah. And then, so when you reshaped and you said the key word was that you're happy with it, right?
Yes.
And when you settled into that, how did that also impact your confidence in other areas of your life? Like, did you notice a shift in general by making that?
Somewhat. I would say that confidence overall for me and for many is impacted by preparedness. And preparedness is impacted by punctuality. So if I show up on time, or if I show up early, I can settle in, I can take off whatever, God forbid, but let's say that there were some craziness in traffic and, or some delays along the way. So if I experience those and I still made it earlier on time, I now have a moment to take a deep breath, to recalibrate and prepare for whatever it is that I need to do. But if I'm rushing and I'm showing up late and the people are already there, I barely have time to scan the room to see who's all there, to assess the atmosphere that I'm in, to allow God to use me in a way that's impactful, because I'm rushing. I wasn't punctual. So now I'm really not prepared, which affects my confidence. And then I cheat, because then I say, okay, Lord, forgive me, but Holy Spirit, guide me and direct me, use me, decrease me, and increase me. Use me in this moment, forgive my lack, but let me depend on you to make this exactly what you intended to be. And so that's my secret weapon. But it's so much better when I can show up prepared, because then I'm confident in what I'm communicating, what I'm sharing. I have that clarity of mind. And that, I think that's what builds an overarching confidence that makes me feel like, yes, I do have things to say. Yes, I have experiences worth sharing. Yes, there is something I say at some point in time that's going to help someone, because I'm coming from a good place. And it doesn't matter if I ever hear about it. Just knowing that my journey isn't for myself and my experiences isn't just for myself is enough. But it's always great for me to have been fed and to have experienced some positive return on my investment. And that's, I think in that way, I am impacted across the board.
I agree. And plus being prepared and doing things early, like I block out space for travel time and things like that. And so my schedule says spaciousness in that spot. Allow time to get there, to settle in, like what you said, and it reduces my stress level as well. Because we don't know whether it's going to be an accident or anything that causes a traffic delay. Those are things that are beyond our control, but we do have time to allow time to get there. Not if the GPS says it takes 30 minutes, so you leave at 9 minutes.
Like, I'm going to beat GPS.
You see get behind
you're like, okay, bet. 30 minutes, I'm going to do it in 27.
Right. And
That
then
was
be
old.
angry behind this little old lady who's creeping along, who gave herself an hour to get there.
All the time in the world. And you're just like, oh my God, will you just drive? And she's just happy with her brand, happy with her life.
Yes. That would have been my mom. My mom was not late for anything.
I love it. And you know
My
what
dad
else?
was the opposite. He was late for everything.
You gotta have one on each side. You know
Mhm.
what else it allows you to do though, besides just recalibrate or be prepared for delays, it physically it allows you to show up in a better state. I can't tell you how many times when I was late, I would show up with my temperature elevated. So I'm warmer and then I need to like cool off and not sweat. And I'm going to stages sometimes and I have to grab a microphone. So I'm like, somebody get me a fan or get me some cold water. And it's just not the state to be in, especially if it's well, in any case, whether it's business, whether it's a conference, whether it's ministry work, even if it's entertainment, like you really want to be in a state of confidence and preparedness. And a lot of that, it involves, taking the time, being planful, being punctual. And don't get me wrong, I am still a work in progress, but because things happen and I'm a new mom too. So I think, but for what it's worth, if you can focus on the element of your brand that you struggle, for me, it just happened to be a time component. If you focus on that area which you struggle and mastering that area, understanding the impact that it has to how people perceive you, and not just because of the people pleasing component. For me, that's important because I want people who I am assigned to or who I have interactions with, like you going back to what you said at the top of this, I want them to feel like our interactions were purposeful, like they got something out of it. It was for a reason, a divine purpose. And so for those reasons, it matters to me that I show up a certain way. And that's not a negative. A lot of times we're taught that being a people pleaser is a negative. It's not, especially if you put God and yourself and your family first. But, leaning a little bit into the scripture side of it, the word of God says to love your neighbor as yourself. So that to me says it's okay to please people to a certain extent, not like taking care of them first. You have to put your own mask on first when you're in an airplane, right? And breathe before you take care of the next person. But there is an element of looking out for each other, showing up in a dependable way, communicating yourself to be reliable and trustworthy, that I believe should be celebrated and accepted for all the positive that it is and not the negative.
Yeah, it's one of those things about finding the harmony between the two. Like anything that's overused can be toxic, right?
Right.
And so even as a pleaser, it's knowing where that harmony is. Whereas, am I concerned about other people? Like, are we concerned about the overall well-being of others? So the intention is coming from a good place, but it's when we sacrifice making sure that we're also pleased that it becomes destructive and toxic, so too much rain can cause a flood, but we need rain, right? So it's a great thing. Right,
too much
water,
food, gluttony.
right. All of these different things. Too much food, it tastes good, but when we eat to be full and not to be satisfied, then we're like, oh, and taking it off, right? And so that to me is one of the areas that and I'm sure you have something to say about that, is what if someone knows that this is a strength and this is something that is a part of their brand, this is a part of how they show up in the world, that they are proud of, but then knowing how to I guess to go back to when you said a softer enter a room in a way that is approachable. So know when that strength may be a barrier, because sometimes I hear things like, just do you, girl, just be you, or, oh, I'm just telling the truth. And so just because something is true doesn't mean it needs to be said by you or within the tone that it's said. And that also
can be a barrier where you're not necessarily approachable, because your truth telling can be harmful when the delivery is not coming from a good place. When it's more about, well, that's just who I am, or I'm just telling the truth type of thing.
Ooh, Melanie. Okay,
You know, I'm just doing me.
now. So what's funny about that, there's a couple of things. First, we have to protect our ear gates and our eye gates and all of that. So we have to be mindful who we listen to, right? Again, I'm often led by scripture, and when it comes to mine, I'll speak it. And right now I'm reminded that the word of God says to seek wise counsel. And so when people are saying, just be you, girl, just be you, they can take it or leave it or whatever. The first thing about that is we are, again, an amalgamation of things we've learned, experiences we've had, things we've watched, all of these different things. And that does not mean we need to just take all of it and keep all of it. You really should take inventory of all the different things that make you who you are and decide for yourself what you want to keep and what you want to get rid of, or what you want to change, or what you want to pray about for God to enlighten you as to whether or not he wants you to remain in that state. Because when we show up in this world, we didn't show up with all of those things. I look at my 13-month-old son, and he is very assertive about certain toys that he wants to play with. But other things I'll say, can I see? And he'll share them with me. Does that make him an aggressive personality? Not at all, you know, but I'm learning him, and he's learning based on my reaction, how he wants to be. So I think that first, when we're getting that advice from our peers and our girlfriends, that we should really do a gut check to see how we feel about that element of our personality and our brand that we're conveying. And a lot of times, if it's something that we're getting commentary on from people that close to us, we're probably already aware of what we want. We're just looking for them to either validate us or give us an out. So I was that way, and sometimes still am. I'm a work in progress. So sometimes I can come off extremely direct and assertive. And what's funny is, I'm sorry, I'm just going to lift my camera a little bit because I feel like I'm looking down at you sometimes. So what's funny about that is I found myself in recent history communicating in a passive aggressive way, which annoys me when I observe it. It grinds my gears because I'm proud of being a direct communicator. So that's a wrong adjustment. So I feel like, okay, great. I don't want people to perceive me as, you know, just unapproachable, or can I say bitchy? Too late, I did. So, but I don't want to be perceived that way. But I do want to communicate directly. I do want you to get exactly what I'm saying without the fluff. And so for me to switch from being assertive to passive aggressive doesn't work for me. But so I had to find a way that I'm comfortable with. And so my girlfriends closest to me, they'll say, oh, that's just Toy. Like she says things in love. It's just her personality. Sometimes they come off strong, but I don't want that to be my brand either. I don't want people to dismiss if I'm coming off too strong as just my personality, because I'm not saying that. I'm not saying, oh, just hear it from me straight up, no chaser, take it or leave it, pick up what I'm putting down. No, if I'm saying something or communicating to you and it's important to me, to us, to our relationship, but you're not hearing me because your personality shuts down at hearing things with a certain tone, or shuts down because I've said it too fast and wasn't looking you in the eye, or was dismissive or multitasking or whatever, it's not effective. It's not fruitful. So yes, I can still be who I am, but in that moment, I need to consider the goal. And if the goal is for us to collaborate or to come together or improve our relationship or both be heard or whatever it is, I need to pause. I need to make sure that you're hearing me. I need to say, Melanie, are you getting it? Or do I need to say it a different way? You know, like I need to be present so that it's not just about me, because I care about that. And the reverse, if my tone shut you down, a lot of times people just shut down and go away and they ignore it and they don't talk about it. But that's the reverse of what needs to happen for my personality type. It needs to be, Toy, pause. I can't even have this conversation with you because I'm not hearing you in that tone. Like, you haven't said, don't talk to me like that, because that's like a trigger, or you're not saying like, you know, whatever, like sometimes it's just met with aggression. And my direct communication isn't meant to be disrespectful or any of those negative connotations that may be perceived, but sometimes it can be perceived as such. And so a lot of times I challenge those that are more phlegmatic or melancholic or all these different sanguine, all these personality types, to go ahead and raise your hand, meet me halfway and say, wait, before we go any further, I need you to know that I'm not hearing you. I'm distracted by questioning whether or not I'm being disrespected in this moment. And that's enough for me to go, whoa, no, that's not what I mean. Let me pause with my speed and my tone or whatever, and just say to you, this is what I'm trying to communicate. And if we need to take the scenic route, we can. I'm used to going straight, but we can go around. And I'm pretty sure that people who are aware and care will be willing to do the same things. So, yeah.
But however, so that what you just said, that takes, what I'm hearing you say is become self-aware about, first of all, back to where you started with what's your present saying about you, right? Two, being aware of what is the message that you would like to convey. So you're clear about what your intention is before you say it. And then being intentional also about your approach to the conversation. And so it's like that assertive is that space in between aggressive and passive. Assertive is right where we do want to land, where we can look someone in the eye and say, let's pause right here, Toy. I do want to hear what you have to share, but right now you're losing me right now.
That's right.
Yeah. Right now I'm about to do this. Like, and so being able to be clear about what it is we want to say beforehand is important, which is also why we don't want to respond and we want to be responsive, not reactive, because when we in our emotions is when it goes either way, right?
That's right. That's right. And a lot of times, first of all, you articulated that so well.
Because I'm working on it, right? When I respond from emotion, I'm pretty sarcastic.
Well, that's the thing.
And that's like cutting somebody with a jagged edged sword, and it's hard to come back from. Like the damage has already happened. And it takes longer to heal. Yeah,
because I think, well, first of all, we as women, and especially as Black women, I mean, I'm being facetious, but we come out of the womb with quick wit, okay? Our clapbacks are, you know, better than anything in the world. They're better than flapjacks, right? So I think that when trying to communicate effectively and maturely and in effort to reach a common goal, or to have a thriving relationship, or to protect friendships, or whatever it is, because these things, when we're working on communication and we're looking at our personal brands and personality types, it's for a purpose. It's not, yes, it's for you to be happy with who you are and to live a fruitful and enjoyable life, but those tend to be lives with other people. And so a lot of times it will warrant some adjustment. Even if you're the same as someone else, like if I'm hanging out with another commander personality, yes, we can gel and vibe together on certain things like tasks. But if we need a minute to assess our feelings or emotions, the two of us together aren't going to get there. We need someone more empathetic to help us figure out how to communicate to each other, what we're feeling and how that's affecting us, like how to de-stress or how to not have anxiety, right? How to take a breather. So we may be strong in some things, but we could use some work in others where opportunities lie. So I do believe that we can show up and have those conversation and exchanges because we care. And I think we have to care. And if you don't care, this is probably not the time for you to make the adjustments. You have to be at a place where you care. And that call you for that too, because like to not care, listen, you need Jesus or something, I don't know. But we should be self-aware, we should care. And in being self-aware and caring, we should be willing to make adjustments. I don't like the word compromise because it sounds like too close to change, but there is a need to make adjustments for the relationships, the experiences, the opportunities, the things you care about. And I don't think that warrants changing who you are. I think that it means that you're operating more in all that makes you who you are. Because if you look at those assessments, no one is just one thing. If I'm an ENTJ, it means I'm a combination of all of these different elements. I am extroverted, but guess what? I'm actually more ambiverted now, and more of an ambivert now, because I kind of need time to me. I was probably more extroverted younger, but now it's shifting and I like it. I like my quiet time in the car where I can meditate before I go into the house after a long day at work. If I'm more intuitive, that's fine. If I'm judgmental, yes, but I also should have some feelings about things. So my point in saying that is you should be able to meet others where they are a little bit closer, because there is a piece of you, a piece of them also in you that should be able to identify with what it is. I have grown to become more empathetic. I used to be like, I don't have an empathetic bone in my body, and would say it boastfully, but it's just not true. I do care, and I care so much that I'm sometimes like, I don't get why you don't get it. But now I realize that won't make anyone get it. It's like, oh, okay, so you don't get it, what I'm saying. How best can I communicate this to you? Or, how best can we figure out how to get to this common goal? And so I think that those exchanges take work, but they start with self-awareness. And a lot of times, until you take a look at yourself and take inventory, you don't know what your personal brand is reflecting to others. And a lot of times we're not even looking in the mirror outside of checking our physical presence. We're not looking in the mirror at our internal selves and doing that inventory. But I think it's so necessary so you can decide what you want to keep and what you want to do away with.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And even I was thinking about Lisa Nichols is what's coming up for me, right? Because also in that space of, like, you are hyper self-aware of who you are, what's important to you, but that's also because you've done your work.
Yeah.
Taking that time to do that inner reflect, that mirror work you just spoke of. And I think about Lisa Nichols because she talks about being in a place where you have nothing to protect, nothing to defend. And oh my goodness, how did I just lose the other one? It'll come to me in a minute. But sometimes that's where that wall is, where we can't hear each other because we're so busy defending our position, protecting what we think is we're at risk of losing.
Yes.
And it creates a barrier that also becomes a part of our brand that goes with us, and it makes us unapproachable. It puts a wall up where people don't see that there can be a way to resolve conflict with you. So especially anybody who's an avoidant, they're going to avoid the conflict altogether, and so then nothing gets resolved. So we don't want that to be what's out there and what people are saying to us. It's like, don't even bother because she's not going to hear you anyway, right? Because it's perceived as she's always has to be right, or it's their way or the highway, which isn't necessarily true about them, but that's the perception.
No, you're absolutely right. I think that a lot of times in communication, people are not listening. They're thinking about their rebuttal. They're thinking about how to defend themselves from the accusation. They are replaying the incident in their minds to figure out what was right or wrong, all of these different things. But at the end of the day, it's only when you take, first of all, if you're having those experiences and you're having them often, then it's time to take inventory. And I think this is probably a good place to give out some tips for how to kind of go about taking inventory and, establishing your brand or rebranding and kind of doing the work, right? If that's okay. So I would say, I would say, first really do that mirror work, like take time, block out, and you gave the suggestion, block out that time on your calendar for you. And this is not the time you get your nails done. This is not the time to get your hair done or go on a girls' trip or go out to dinner, have drinks or whatever. This is the time for you to sit with who you are and take inventory. And so when you're sitting with who you are, you're looking at all of your experiences, all of your communication, all of your relationships, your career, all of that. And you're asking yourself, how do I feel about these different areas? How do I feel about my relationship with my husband or my wife or my partner or my, my significant other? How do I feel about my relationship with my kids? How do I feel about my relationship with my boss at my job, with my subordinates at my job, about my job in and of itself? How do I feel about my pastor, my first lady, my church, my minister, my priest? How do I feel about the place that I go to worship? And you're literally doing a feelings check. And this is coming from a person who is more logical than anything. And I'm talking about doing a feelings check. So just assess, do the inventory and assess, are you happy with who you are and how you show up in those relationships, in those environments? You can literally make a list. I'm a list person. It can be yes or no. Do I feel good? Do I feel happy? Do I feel sad? Do I feel content? Whatever. And just check yes or no. So once you do that assessment, then you decide if there are areas that you're not happy with, those are the areas that you focus on for making an adjustment. What I'd also suggest is at that point, figuring out, I would say do all of them, but figuring out which assessments you want to take. I don't have any investment in any of them, so I'm not going to mention them, but they're all online. I've mentioned them throughout this conversation, my results for them, but take a bunch of assessments and see if they're consistent for you. Then look at all of the details for each one of those buckets and circle or decide what elements of those personality traits you want to have or you want to shine as a reflection of your personal brand. So if you want to be more compassionate, make sure you circle it or write it down. If you want to be more empathetic, circle it or write it down. If you want to be, more of a leader, circle that and write it down. So it can be any combination of these qualities that you want to lean more into. And then you decide what areas you can show up in practicing those things. So if I know that I should be more compassionate in my relationship and more empathetic in my relationship, now I have to figure out, and it doesn't have to be rocket science or make it up. You can look online and we have intellect at our fingertips. You can always say, what questions can I ask my children to show more interest in their day, whatever it might be. And so you take that one little step and say, okay, every day when I get the kids from school, I'm going to sit them down and make their post-school snack. And we're going to gather around the kitchen island. And I'm going to ask each one of them, tell me one thing you did today that made you smile, or one thing you did today that frustrated you, but you overcame it. Now I'm showing up as a concerned person, which is outside of my typical personality, but it's showing interest and empathy and compassion for the people that I care about. So it might take a while, but because it's going to take effort. But the next thing you know, you're going to look up and the kids are just going to walk in the door and they're going to automatically start telling you, and you're going to be listening. And now you've increased the benefits of that relationship in both directions, but you took the initiative. So taking little opportunities like that, if it's at work, and this is a perfect example that I actually did for myself. I am a leadership type. And so at work, when there are team building exercises, or that have been in the past, instead of shooting my hand up first to say, oh, I have the answer, or, oh, I'll be the leader, or, oh, this is how we should do it, I literally count to 10. And in counting to 10, that gives the opportunity for someone who's building up the courage to raise their hand an opportunity to do so. And so I'm not the first one always going, yep, I got it. Yep, I'll do it. Yep, it's me. But now I'm giving them the opportunity to be a leader, which may not be as natural for them as it is for me. So those are some just quick tips to get you on the journey to either branding or rebranding yourself. I think it definitely starts, like I said, with being self-aware. So taking inventory so that because being self-aware is not, for me, I'm always like, I know what the problems are. Like, I know, but doing something about them is the challenge. But some people, they don't even know. They don't even realize that, I'm whiny when I speak, or I'm too aggressive when I tell people what to do, or I'm too demanding, or whatever the case may be. And they don't even know that people perceive them or respond a certain way because of it. So take that time to do the work so that you can then decide. And all of this is self-work. So it's not like, okay, show the list to your partner and ask them, which ones should I be more of? No. You have to do a gut check to say, okay, I find myself telling way too many lies. So I need to be more honest, because people have that problem. There are pathological liars out there that just lie for the sake of making up a story. By the way, if you are a pathological liar, you're probably a writer, and you probably need to explore a career in entertainment, creating stories for people that don't exist yet.
Right, that's what I wasn't expecting. That's wow, because they're very creative, right?
Correct.
Right. Creative with the truth, right? Creative approach.
Rebrand yourself. If you have a reputation for being a pathological liar, stop lying, but find a way to craft that skill set, or that into a skill set, right? Because I make the joke all the time that in my career that, I get to work with a bunch of liars all the time. They get paid a lot of money to make up stories. So yes.
Beautiful. I love that nugget. Can I just interject? Can I just add something there too, as it relates to lying? Sometimes the lie is really the lie we're telling ourselves about.
Yes.
Which will be in that assessment that you just mentioned.
For sure. Sure.
Let me be quiet and hear what else you had to say.
No, that's actually a perfect way to just kind of, because I could talk about this forever, but I guess that's a perfect place to settle into is, the lies we tell ourselves. Because if you're going to rebrand yourself, you need to accept the truth about yourself. And it's not all going to be pretty. We stayed pretty surface today before getting to the lies, but not surface, because I think it is a hard thing to accept that you might be too aggressive or perceived as too direct, and people don't want to approach you because of it. That was something that affected me. I did not want people to think they couldn't come to me, especially as someone who is always thinking about how I can make God happy with how I'm communicating with his people. So that was important to me. But I do believe that, when it comes to things like lying, you really have to do the thing that God has told me like all the time. And that's come naked before the altar, meaning strip off everything that you are hiding behind and show up just you and God, and be honest and be prepared to hear what God has to say about you and what you say about yourself that is not pretty. But know that it's okay, because it can be changed. You don't have to keep it. You don't have to hold on to it. So feel free to look in the mirror and say, I am a pathological liar. I am abusive with my words. I'm verbally abusive. I am inconsiderate of people's feelings. I am a Debbie Downer. I am, whatever those negative things are. Speaking of words, I don't want it to sound like this cliche, like give yourself new self-affirmations, but you should. You know this. I produced a TV show called That Girl Lele, and it is largely based on this girl's positive affirmation app that comes to life. And that's enough of the shameless plug, streaming now on Netflix. But
no shame in the plug. Like, this is important. Right. We think right?
But you should make the words of who you are come to light so that you can speak new words and breathe life into new words, new affirmations, new associations with your brand. So if you're like, yes, I am a pathological liar, and then you decide what you're going to be, you say, no, I was a pathological liar, and now I'm honest even when it's painful. I'm honest even when it undoes something that I said. I'm honest even if it challenges a relationship I value and want to keep. If you were to say, I am a Debbie Downer. No, I was a Debbie Downer, but now I'm chipper, even if it takes 4 cups of coffee. I'm chipper, even if that means celebrating my enemy. I'm happy, even if that means that I have to pretend or put it on until I believe it. You can tell a new story. Yes. And it's not being fake. It's not being phony. It's not being an imposter. It is choosing who you want to be. I get so tired of people saying, oh, I have imposter syndrome, or, oh, I'm being fake, or I feel fake, or this or that. No, you are taking back the reins of who you are and deciding who you want to be. And that is your right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm giving you 2 snaps and a swirl, right? And a swirl, right? Because all of that is so incredibly important, which is another form of rebranding, right? When you're shifting that narrative about who you are and how you show up in the world. And even with that, we won't even call it a shameless plug, because you get to be proud of what you created. Right? You get to actually stand in that and own your brilliance and do so unapologetically, right? And so I love the reframe on that. And like, if we were to talk about a shameless plug, which is not shame, like I have a program called Reclaim Your Love Story, right? Because it is all about how we show up in our own lives and the way we love on ourselves. Yes. So let me just pause for a minute to go back to me paraphrasing things that you shared. I hope I was able to write fast enough. So one, being self-aware, like taking that time to do an assessment, take this inventory, which means decide shows up in 2 places, because we first get to choose to do this, like to become self-aware. Michelle Obama is not the only one becoming. We all are, and we get to keep evolving, right? Yeah. And so becoming self-aware, doing that assessment, and in that space, giving yourself permission to feel. And doing your best not to judge yourself for what feelings come up, because there's no right or wrong to them. It's this truth into them, in it, and it's wisdom. It's an opportunity. Yeah. Making a decision. So deciding, sometimes we forget that self-love, this whole journey to joy, is that it's a path, it's a practice, but it's also a choice. And so you get to decide what your steps are in that, which pieces you want to lean into more because they feel aligned with who you are. Yeah. And then practice by taking small steps.
Small steps, yes.
Small steps repeatedly, like that consistently, in that repeated practice, that repetition strengthens that area for you. And then I heard you talking about being present. Like when we're asking our kids about what went well for, like, what was the best part of their day, and all of these things, which is like And my thing is like, what were your yucks today? And what was your, right? Let's do some
I like that.
Your
Yuck,
yucks,
yum.
what were your yums, right? And then just being intentional about being present and giving yourself permission to take that pause for as long as you need that pause to happen. To come to terms with your own truth. Again, doing so in a way that's compassionate, not judgmental, because it gives you an opportunity to really blossom and step into your beingness. And so that's and when you talk about like being able to strip away and coming naked, reminds me of what one of my mentors talk about. And which is what drew me to her. She tells a story about like, don't die hiding. And so when we're thinking about our brand, if our brand that's out there is actually a lie, then we're taking that lie with us to the grave. And is that really what we want?
No. Well, you don't live. You haven't lived. You haven't lived. If
you really haven't
lived.
Right. Yep. And I love how you talked about like even with like that girl Lele, and it's like the affirmations come to life. And you talk about like breathing life into the words that we use about ourselves. Can be so yummy, so juicy, so delicious.
I love it. I love it.
My feminine energy, right? Like that is a beautiful space to be. Like I was really fascinated by the fact that you even thought to bring the character in an affirmation app come to life. And like that's a beautiful metaphor of how we do get to live and reframe or shift the narrative about who we are and how we show up in the world.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the symbolism is there, and it's true for all of us that, you know, the words that we have spoken, we've given life to them. And we have to be very cognizant of the new words that we want to speak, the impact of those old words and the new words that we want to speak, because we're giving life to them. We're breathing life into those words. We're manifesting what the future will be because of the words that we speak. And I could go on and on, but I know we're out of time.
I know you gotta go.
About
so what do you recap?
That whole thing. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just saying that I could go on and on and on about breathing life and even sharing my stories about how I've done that, but I'll save it for another time.
Right. We've already agreed that you're coming back, right? So that we can get into all of that. We cannot go through all of the things that Miss Toy Monique Hawkins has to offer us in 45 minutes to an hour. So any closing thoughts on branding and rebranding that you want to share?
Yeah, just I know that for some it will be challenging to think of such a business or corporate term as it pertains to self, but really shake that off and just think about the benefits of your brand. And you don't even have to call it that, honestly. It's about the work. It's about the work. It's about how you show up, how you're perceived, the lasting impressions that you leave behind, and feeling good, being happy with all of those things. And if you're not, it's time to do the work. It's time to be, take inventory, become self-aware, make a decision, and then begin to execute step by step.
Yeah. And so you can't come to She Chose Joy without talking about joy in this way, because even in a sense, when we rebrand, when we own who we are and what our energetic signature really is, there is joy in that. Yeah. And so one of the questions I always ask is about gratitude, because I believe that joy and gratitude are partners. And so what are you most grateful for in this moment? Right.
I'm most grateful that God answers prayer, because I prayed for my son and he's here. and he brings me so much joy every day. And the easy thing would be say, I'm grateful for my son, but no, I'm grateful that God answers prayer, because that's a continual thing, that when I ask, God answers, and he favors me and he covers me. And for that, I'm so grateful, because that means that every day that my son is bringing me joy, it's because I'm constantly praying and covering him, and making sure that God is a part of our circle and our dynamic and our family. So yes, I will say that.
Like, I can't get enough of his eyes. They draw me in.
Oh, thank you. Oh, he's so amazing.
And so what brings you, well, we just spoke with someone who brings you joy. How do you choose joy consistently?
It takes effort. It doesn't just happen. I think that constantly assessing, stepping out of the mundane and stepping out of the day-to-day and the schedule and the things that time dictates that we have to do, and just assessing where I am, what I need, what's the priority. I think actually doing that every day, I think that's what helps, because then that tells me what I need to be prayerful for and mindful of, so that I am always thinking about, because when I'm doing that, I'm thinking about the positive, the joyful things, not the negative or the hurtful things. And then I'm going to butcher this scripture, but it says something like, whatever things are good, whatever things are perfect, whatever things are positive, think on those things. So really making sure that my mind's eye is focused on the things that bring me joy when I am assessing. I think that's the work that I do, or try to do as much as I can, hopefully daily, but sometimes there's a day or two that sneaks in where I miss it. But not for long, because I don't like the feeling otherwise. I have to be in a joyful spirit. I have to be in a joyful environment, and I have control of that.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. It's a way of minding our thoughts, right? So beautiful. So I am really grateful that you spent this time. Like, it was great to create space and share the space with you. How can listeners stay connected to you? Actually, before you answer that, let me just say one thing. Please. You have a really full schedule.
I do.
You have a really full schedule. And yet what you just mentioned about choosing joy is taking those few seconds, or however long it takes, to self-assess and see what your heart is calling for in this moment, to tap into that joy, is golden, because there's so many listeners, there's so many women out there, and some who are listening to this podcast who feel like they don't have time to slow down even for that. And so you are a living example that even with an extremely full schedule and lots of responsibilities on your plate, that there is time, when we choose it, to pause for a moment, to become self-aware about what we need. And so I was getting ready to bypass that, and it was like, bring it back.
I'm glad you didn't bypass it. It's so important. Yes, I have a full schedule. In fact, I'm leaving you to go and meet a writer at Soho, and which is really important, because I'm hoping that she will turn this book that I have into a TV show. But even if it's the walk to the elevator, down to the car, or if it's, once I arrive and I park, and, like, it doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be an hour. Take those pockets of time for yourself. Yes. For me, it's almost always in the car. When I get home, before I get out of the car, I'll take a minute for myself and just decompress, encourage myself, talk to God, whatever it is. That's my moment. And it doesn't, it's great if you can schedule it. And if you do schedule it and you miss it, don't beat yourself up. Reschedule it, resume. I also, by the way, have a little reminder that pops up every day on my phone. And sometimes I ignore it, but a lot of times I do see it, and I can't swipe it away without doing it. It says, for me, it says, pray without ceasing. And it's a reminder to always pray. And so, yes, every day it pops up, and it won't go away until I swipe it away. And I cannot swipe it away without praying. So even if it's just a really quick, thank you, Lord, and then I swipe it away, like it's a moment for me to connect with God, whether it's subconsciously or intentionally, it doesn't matter. That physical reminder is there for me to connect with God. And so I think I need to add another one that just says connect with self, but it's the same thing for me right now. So I'm glad you didn't bypass that.
You said was saying thank you, God. It's a simple prayer, but it's meaningful because again, it's expressing that gratitude for what you already have.
Yes.
And so may God continue to bless you with all that you ask for or something greater.
Thank
and
you.
So how can others get in, stay connected to you? Where can they find you?
I am most, oh gosh, I'm gotten really bad with my social media, but I am most active on, I am on nothing, but I'm on, I'm on Instagram. And it's just at Toy Monique. And then on Twitter, it's at Ms. Toy Monique, MSTOYMONIQUE. So yeah, Instagram or Twitter are probably the best places.
So on Twitter, you're like Miss Jackson if you're nasty, but on Instagram.
No. Yeah, now. I have no idea why I didn't grab this Toy Monique, and I think someone else probably has it by now. So they should check the profile picture.
Yeah. And so again, thank you all so much. And here's the thing. Your freedom lies in your decision to say yes to who you are, yes to what you want, and yes to what you stand for. And so to all my listeners out there, will you stand for getting clear about your brand, who you are, and how you want to make the essence of you, like the truest essence of you, come alive? And so until next time, I send you all blessings.